Books presents an unabridged recording of Baseball, A History of America's Favorite Game by George Vecsey, narrated by Alan Nebelthaw and directed by Jeff Brick. This book is copyrighted 2006 by George Vecsey. This recording is copyrighted 2006 by Recorded Books. A game that has its elusive roots in England and Germany, and among the first settlers in the New World, has evolved over the last 200 years or so into an extraordinary and complex aspect of the modern American psyche. George Vecsey, sports writer for the New York Times, brings his experience and storytelling talents to bear as he casts a fresh eye on baseball, illuminating both its foibles and its triumphs. And now, baseball.
Prologue. It's all in the mind. George Harrison in Yellow Submarine. When we were young, we played ball in the family backyard in a quiet corner of Queens, pretending we were Jackie Robinson or Stan Musial. There was a cinder block wall behind our house, which made it easy to imagine we were taking pot shots at the concave right field wall in Ebbets Field, a few miles to our west. Occasionally we would break a window in our neighbor's house, a tinkling sound, unlike the concussion of a Duke Snider drive off the wall in Brooklyn. It was not hard to imagine the bright blue-scripted Dodgers across our chests. Some nights when my father was not working at his newspaper job, we would sit on camp chairs on the lawn and listen to the Dodger game, the austere voice of Red Barber and the mellifluous tones of Connie Desmond. I remember three things about those nights. How nice it was to have my father home, the rude shock when I plugged the radio into the garage socket, and the fireflies floating around at dusk. There are no fireflies like that anymore. No Brooklyn Dodgers, either. Baseball with your dad. The American verity. Half a century later, I found myself on a front lawn somewhere out in America, pitching a wiffle ball to my grandson. "Hands back," I told the boy. "Turn your hip to me. Look over your shoulder at the ball." Over the years, I have discovered the best way to teach children to hit is turning them into the twisted stance of Stanley Frank Musial, the laughing cavalier of the St. Louis Cardinals, who played his last game back in 1963. Children are always surprised when they uncoil from the Musial stance, hitting the ball harder than they had expected. Sooner or later, their bodies will find their natural stance, but turning them into a human corkscrew is a good way to start. The boy had already been taught well by his father, but I could not resist adding a refinement. "And smile. Always smile. Hitting is fun," I said. Children love getting permission to whack away at something. Smiling erases anxiety, releases positive energy. "Stan Musial always smiled," I added. This was an exaggeration, of course. Musial only smiled after he slid into second base, raising a puff of white dust and brown dirt. I can still see Musial, his full grin lighting up the old bandbox in Brooklyn, a place he terrorized. My grandson had never heard of Stan Musial, had no idea he was one of the great hitters of the 1940s and 1950s. All the boy knew was that his grandfather was tossing a hollow plastic ball to him on the lawn, showing him a coiled stance that worked somehow. Someday, if I have the time, I will tell him stories that old people know about baseball. How Musial's teammate, Enos Country Slaughter, dashed home with a winning run in that wonderful World Series of 1946, and how Musial used to play the harmonica for his Cardinal teammates during long train rides. Yes, train rides. And how 40 years after retirement, Musial would still whip out his harmonica and entertain fans outside the steamy ballpark a few blocks from the roiling Mississippi. I have seen that. They loved him, Even in Brooklyn, I said, invoking the holy borough of my childhood team, the long-departed Dodgers. Someday I will drive my grandson past the block where we used to chase Jackie Robinson for autographs outside an old ballpark that is as real to me as an amputated limb might be. Dodger fans loved Musial even when he beat them, I said. You know what they used to call him? The boy shook his head. Stan the Man. My grandson smiled at the nickname, twisted into the new stance. There was still time for a few more swings before it got dark. Chapter 1. 6 Degrees. In 1958, the St. Louis Cardinals made a barnstorming trip to Japan on the Golden Anniversary.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.